Hello everyone, this is Hank. I'm back for another episode. Today we are going to talk about the EOS RP custom shooting modes. Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with that, it's namely, if you look at this picture here, there's three custom shooting modes called C1, C2, C3. C stands for custom shooting mode. Okay, so what are they and how should they be used? So basically, the Canon EOS RP as well as other Canon cameras, Canon allows you to save the configuration, whatever the setting that you have, onto a mode to be recalled by just a switch of a button. Whenever you switch to either C1, C2, C3, it'll recall everything that you have registered at. So it comes in handy when, for example, you shoot different types of photography, right? So you have a custom setting. When I say custom setting, I'm talking about all of the menu items, whatever you change, customize. All of the custom buttons that you program, okay? All of the custom functions, for example, if you reprogram for back button focus, for example, all of that, right? So, for example, if you shoot birds, you may want to use a very high shutter speed. You shoot portrait, you may want to do a really small aperture value, that sort of thing. So you can register your setting for a particular type of photography, and this thing will remember it, and you can recall it very quickly. Okay, that way you don't have to reset everything. It would take time. All you have to do is switch the mode, and everything will be working just fine. Okay, so there are just a few limitations. They are not perfect, and let me kind of get that out of the way. Okay, so basically you cannot do a customized C1, C2, C3 if you are using one of these modes to start out with. Okay, so if you're using automatic A+, special scene mode, or movie mode, you cannot do customization. There won't be an option for you to do so. All right. Other than that, all the other modes, FVP, TVAV, and boat mode, including C1, C2, C3, you can register them onto another button. For example, you can register C1 onto C2. You can do that. All right. So now the movie button is kind of interesting. Okay, remember that some people complain, hey, I can't do movie custom. So what kind of logic is it? But actually you can. It's just a different way of doing it. So remember this red button here? This red button is called the movie record button. Okay, so in any mode, literally, you can press this and you can make a movie out of. Okay, and it will be using whatever mode that you have set it at, and any other setting that you set it at, including automatic, right? So this button here, now there's a menu for movie setting, right? You can change those, and the custom shooting mode will remember them. So as long as you don't use this movie mode here and use this button to make video, you can still customize it and save it. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Okay, those are basically the only limitations. Now, as far as documentation is concerned, okay, theoretically you can save any menu items that you change, it will remember. Any of the customized button, right? You program a certain button to do something, you'll remember it for the configuration that you're going to set. Now you change that, save it at a configuration, you can call them up and they will work differently, including the back button focus, of course, right? So very useful set of buttons to remember to use. So I'm going to demonstrate just quickly to give you an idea, right? Remember, it remembers everything. So that's assumption. If you find that there are occasions that it doesn't, please let me know so that I can learn as well. Because right now I'm assuming everything's remembered, because everything that I ever use, it remembers, put it that way. So I haven't run into a problem. All right, except for the limitations I told you about. Okay, so right now, for example, you can do whatever you want with it, right? So right now, for example, what I have right now is let's go back to, I like to use manual mode, but any mode would work, right? Except for the 3 modes that I just talked about. So I'm in manual mode here. Okay, before I made the video, I basically reset the camera back to practically default. Okay, the only thing that I change is the time, auto shut off time, because otherwise my cameras keep shutting down on me when I'm making this movie. So, but everything else is default. Now, there's a possibility that I actually will do this. I haven't, but I will start doing it. It's like sometimes I don't even remember what the default is. Okay, so I'm going to save the default as onto C3. I'm going to use C3 as the default state for the camera, EOS RP camera. Okay, so to register, okay, so right now that is what I have. To register, oops, sorry, I should use a menu. Okay, press the info to go to the wrench, yellow wrench. And then you go to number 6. Okay, custom shooting mode. That's what you want. Okay, so there are 3 functions, and I will explain each one in detail. So first of all, register function, you press the set button, it allows you to choose which one do you want to register to. So register meaning that all the setting, all the menu changes, all the custom buttons, all of the custom functions. Okay, so in this case, I have everything at default. So I'm going to say the default. So I will remember what the default of the camera is without actually having to clear it. So that, I just thought about that. It might be a really good idea for what I do anyway, because when I prepare for these videos, I have to set it back. And I didn't even think about. Okay, so I'm going to press that. It asked me to confirm it. So now my C3 has the defaulted state, whatever I had. Right? So right now, just to show you, I'm going to C3. Okay, as you can see that the only difference here, it tells me I'm in C3, but it tells me that you were in manual mode when you save this thing. Okay, so that's what the M is for. Whatever mode that you had when you saved it, it remembers here. And it functions just like the manual mode, even though you're in C3. Now, what do I mean by function? Now, you can feel free to change whatever setting. So whatever you want to shoot, right? You don't have to be locked into this. You just have a starting point. Okay, so you can change everything you want. But as you can see, it remembers everything, including all the menu items, right? So remember all of that. So right now everything's defaulted, right? Okay, so later I'm going to show you some of the changes I'm going to be doing, just to give you an example. Okay, so that's basically, okay, let's go back to the menu. We'll explain it. Clear setting, of course, if I'm tired of one of these modes, I'm going to be able to clear, for example, C3, if I press set. Okay, but I'm not going to do that, right? So you can clear it if you want to. Now this one is pretty interesting. Okay, so for example, the C3, okay, it will remember even my shutter speed, aperture, and the auto ISO that I set. Now, if I leave it at disable, right, every time I go back to C1, okay, it will remember exactly what I had registered. So it always go back to, in my example, it would be 1/125th of a second, f5.6, and auto ISO, right? It will go back to that setting every single time if I have it disabled. Now, if I have it enabled, right, and I'm not going to enable it because I prefer disable. When I enable it, that means that, for example, I don't like that shutter speed. I change to, say, 1/200. Okay, this thing will remember and updates it. So the next time I go back, okay, instead of 1/125th, it will remember the 1/200. Updates it, you lose the original setting forever. So imagine if you update like 20 things, and then you won't be able to remember very well, unless you're on purpose changing it and remember that you had changed it. So that's why I leave it at disable. Your mileage may vary. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to, for example, like now I'm going to shoot something else, right? And for example, I'm shooting bird, of course. Okay, so I set it 1,000, and my I want my f-stop to be less. Like say I want to shoot 1,000 f2.8. And I wanted to shoot ISO fixed. Okay. That's kind of dark. So to get the correct exposure, I need a pretty high ISO. You get the idea, right? So for example, so that is what I set. And of course, I'm shooting birds. So I want to change a whole bunch of things. For example, I want to change the autofocus to, let's say, this. Right? And I want to change, instead of one shot, I want servo because I'm shooting bird. Right? And I want high speed. Okay? And I'm going to keep that. And then, of course, I want to shoot raw. So I press info for raw. But I don't want JPEG, right? So I go there. Okay, so I change to raw. Now I'm going to also change the movie record size. I'm going down to the next one. Okay, so that is one of the movie item. Okay, so let's assume that this is what I wanted to use to shoot birds with, and of course I'm going to change some of the menu item as well, so that you can tell. Okay, so for example, I go into to custom function and change, let's say, 100 to 1,000. 100 to 1,000. 1,000 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 to 1, Oops, don't want to clear it. I want to go in here. Yeah, and I want to customize it, but I'm going to change the shutter button, disable the autofocus there. So I'm going to use the back button. Okay, so I change that. Okay, that's the only thing I'm going to change, but you get the idea. Every single menu items, okay, you can change and it will remember. Okay, so now I'm going to register this again. Go to the yellow, number 6. Okay, I'm going to register, and this time to C1. Okay, so okay, so let's go back to C3, for example, because remember C3 was the original, right? As you can tell, that all of these things that we had changed for the C1, okay, had gone back because it remembers C3. C3 is all defaulted. Okay, movie mode, JPEG mode, okay, one-shot mode, low speed, right? Spot metering, spot focus, all of that stuff is, remember, including the shutter speed and the aperture and the auto ISO. Okay. Now if I switch to C1, okay, again it changed to C1. It said last time you stored you were using manual mode. Note, okay, the AF was that I had chosen. The servo I had chosen. High speed I was chosen. RAW. And the movie format. See, it remembers movie format. All you have to do is press the movie button, then I can record it using this, or whatever the menu item that I can set. Right? So you see the including the speed and the aperture and the ISO that I set. So it's very quick. If this is my favorite mode, or my favorite setting for birds, then all I have to do is switch to C1 and I'm there immediately. Don't have to think. Now that include the change for the button, right? This thing, remember, see, metering start only. So for example, right now, I can no longer focus using a shutter button. I'm pressing a shutter button, nothing happened. I use the back button, it focus. And it turns blue instead of green because I had switched to AI servo. Okay? So basically, the custom function, they call it custom shooting mode, really useful, and you can store 3 separate configurations. Unfortunately, you can't do more than that, but 3 is usually more than you need. I only use 2 usually. One for portrait, one for action, and today I just thought of using C3 as a default, so I'm going to have 3. But okay, the difficulty is like, you gotta keep it simple because you won't remember the next time you use it. You say, what was C1 again? You know, or what was C2 again? That sort of thing. So okay, you can always go to the info and look at the setting that you have for C1. That would be one way to do it, I guess. Either do it here or do it like that. Now you can look and you can see, right? Okay. With that, I'd like to thank you very much. I would appreciate a like on the video if you haven't subscribed. I absolutely would appreciate your subscribing to my channel. Thank you very much. You have a good one.